I went to a bar with one of my buddies once. I'd only recently turned 21, so hadn't been to many bars. My companion had been drinking on the way to the pub and was already somewhat tipsy when we arrived, so he called a cab and returned home. When I was alone at the pub, a gorgeous girl named Carla approached me and started talking to me. I was being flirted with by this chick. To be honest, I pretended to be drunk already because it might help me get her tonight. She kept buying me drinks and I became concerned. She started flirting with me right away and offered to let us go to her apartment by ourselves. I had a couple of drinks and was quite drunk at this point, so I accepted. I was worried because everything seemed to be going too smoothly for me. We got into her car and headed down the road. "Do you want to go to the liquor store and buy some more drinks? Don't worry about paying, because I'll buy it." She made an offer. I was already buzzed and I wanted to be able to keep going for the remainder of the night. I told her I was already inebriated, but she insisted. I didn't want to appear clumsy, so I told her to grab me a pint of bourbon and some apple juice to drink it with. She went into the supermarket with the intention of purchasing only a pint, but she left with much more. Because I imagined she wanted to drink more, I gave her a fifth instead of a pint. We passed the bottle back and forth in the car, but she only took small sips. I tried taking small sips, but she kept handing me the bottle and asking me to drink. I managed to drink the entire bottle of apple juice while pretending to drink it by spitting the liquor into the apple juice bottle. Before she could see it, I flung the apple juice bottle full of bourbon out the window. I didn't want her to notice that I was acting sloppy. She mistook me for a sloppy drunk when I was just buzzed. We arrived at her place. I faked to trip and slam my head against the front door. She helped me as I walked inside by holding my hand. She walked into her house and opened the unlocked front door. We entered her home and she shut and locked the door. Well, that struck me as weird, so I told her I needed to go to the restroom. I entered the bathroom, locked the door, and examined myself in the mirror. I just felt strange, as if something wasn't quite right. After finishing the bottle earlier, I saw that I was growing more inebriated. I made myself puke up the alcohol I drank by turning on the sink to generate noise. To sober up, I flushed and proceeded to the sink, where I began sipping tap water from my hands. When I turned the sink off, I could hear her conversing with someone. "He's completely wasted. He's hardly able to stand. Get the van ready." Who was she speaking with? And what are you going to do? I entered the living room after exiting the bathroom. The living room was somewhat pitch dark. "Hey, where are you going?" I mumbled my words like I was inebriated. "Let's go into my room," she whispered as she strolled back into the darkened living room. But I smelled something dangerous because of what I'd heard in the bathroom. I smiled at her and explained that I simply needed to use the restroom one more time and that I was sorry for being so wasted. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door after she agreed. I heard her say something to someone else again. I believe that I heard a male voice respond this time. I honestly didn't pay attention to what she said since there was something wrong going on. It was about placing me in a van while I slept, and I needed to get out of that house. I jumped right out of the bathroom window and sprinted faster than I had ever run in my life. I didn't bother to look behind me or anything. I simply sprinted through the front yard, over the fence, across someone else's yard, across a road and towards the main road. I continued racing along the main street until I came across a convenience store. I walked right into it, stood straight in front of the camera at the front of the store. I ordered a taxi and returned home. I tried to recall what happened that evening. What were their plans for the evening? Why was she attempting to get me so drunk? I assumed it was a heist, because she continued to spend money on us, and most importantly, with whom was she discussing things? Was she attempting to kidnap me? And what was in the room they were attempting to draw me into? I returned to the house with a couple of pals the next day after the event to check what was going on. There was no one there. There were no cars, no people, just nothing. There's nothing there but an empty house. I eventually discovered that the house was a summer rental, and whoever those people were, they broke into it and only stayed for one night before leaving. I started dating Camilla during my graduation years. Everything was normal between us. I never thought something was off about her or that something could be bothering her. We used to go out on dates and do other normal couples things. But one day I broke up with her at my home since she was clingy. She asked wherever I go, She was mad when I was on a business trip with a female partner. She threatened to self-harm if I tried to talk out of things. And it was a pretty ugly breakup. She immediately ran from my house. I didn't follow her since maybe she wanted some privacy, or she could head home. Camilla vanished without a trace the next morning. I attempted to contact her but was unable to do so. She didn't go home last night, so her family was just as irritated as I was. We alerted the authorities and a formal hunt for Camilla began. Of course, I was the police's first suspect, because Camilla was last seen right outside my house. Her parents were furious with me for allowing her to run away alone in the middle of the night, and the police even searched my house but didn't find anything. It was as though she had mysteriously vanished. We even considered the possibility that she'd been abducted. Camilla was nowhere to be found as the hours turned into days, weeks, and months passed. Gradually more time passed, and it had been 2 freaking years since Camilla had lost, but I couldn't move on with my life because her disappearance always haunted me. And no matter how hard I tried to forget her, people would always make it a point to blame me of Camilla's disappearance. It made me quite paranoid, since I couldn't sleep well at night because I had incubus. I always felt like someone was walking around my house, my food usually missing, and also I heard footsteps, but as I also thought it was just my imagination, and I went to therapy for this. I went home early one day since some of my important documents had gone missing. I began searching my entire house for them, but they were nowhere to be found, so I proceeded to the basement storeroom. Years had passed since the storehouse had been opened, and there was no possibility the records were still in there. I couldn't find it in the storeroom either, as usual. However, as I was walking out the door, I heard a loud bang coming from the rusted old closet against my wall. My palms began to sweat, my heart began to race, and I went ahead and opened the closet door. Camilla was crouching down inside the closet, staring at me with wide eyes. In a surprise, I lurched backwards and nearly tripped over my own feet. I couldn't make sense of the scenario for a few minutes. She must have chosen her hiding location very carefully all the time, since it never occurred to me to check the storage. How did the police not see you right here? I asked her in bewilderment. I went out whenever the police were here, and then I snuck back in easily while you were sleeping or going to work, she said in a small, terrified voice. Right. When we were dating, I gave her the spare keys to my house and completely forgot to retrieve them. How did she manage to stay in this situation for 2 years? She clarified that for me by stating that she did come out of the storage room sometimes, especially in the middle of the night to steal some food from the fridge. And that explained everything that has happened in my house for the last 2 years. Why bother doing it in the first place? I asked her because I was too terrified. I didn't want to stay away from you, so the best way to do it was hiding in your own house so I could watch wherever you go. Who did you meet? What you were doing? I don't want to leave you out of my sight. That's why I slept with you every night. She replied with a creepy voice. I was scared to death. Jesus, this woman went crazy. She pleaded with me to let her stay at my house because she wanted to stay with me? But of course, I couldn't listen to this. It was time to put an end to this. I tried to explain to her that we'd already broken up, so she needed to move on. But she didn't listen, not even once. So I decided to call the police and her parents, since she's a total maniac, and she's even stalked me, so this must be a crime. Camilla, however, wasn't happy with this and ruined my life in just one stroke. When the police arrived, instead of accepting her mistake, she told the police that I had kept her locked in my house against her will. In my defense, I could only say that I was the one to inform them of her, but the police didn't buy it because they thought I had just confessed. So, just one claim from her, I was sentenced to jail for second-degree kidnapping with 5 years in prison. I was innocent, but there was no proof for me, since the situation only had 2 of us, and the night that she disappeared, she was last seen running away from my home. Probably the police still suspect me. But after this happened, they already had reason to arrest me. Sometimes Camilla even visited me with so much joy on her face since I got in prison. I couldn't go anywhere to move on with another woman.
so she didn't have to worry about it ever again.